Go ahead.
Hi, welcome to Caroline Crafting. We're at Neighbor's Quilt Shop today. Um,
Go ahead.
Hi, welcome to Carolina Crafting. I'm Jackie Gents. This morning we're at Neighbor's Craft. I need a teleprompter.
Go ahead.
Hi, welcome to Carolina Crafting. I'm Jackie Gents. Today we're at Neighbor's Quilt Shop. Let's go back into the. Can we just keep going?
Yeah, I'll shop Quilt.
Yeah. Let's go back to her work. Let's go back to the workroom and see what Dana's doing today. Her name's Deena. Let's go back to Deena's workroom and see what she's doing today. So, from the looks of this, I think we're making a baby quilt.
We are making a baby quilt. Those are the quickest, easiest gifts to give. And flannel's easy also because you don't have to put a batting in between. Basically, you just want to cut your squares to whatever size you'd like, and these are cut into 6-inch squares.
Do you pre-wash?
No, I don't pre-wash any of my fabric, especially if it's Quilt Shop quality fabric, because it's usually dye stable, and it's, you know, the chemicals and things that are in it aren't too harmful, and you're going to wash it anyway once you're finished.
That's right.
So, and it shrinks too much to be able to work with it. So
It probably wouldn't shrink evenly either.
no, it doesn't shrink evenly. And once it's sewed together, then if you use a cotton thread and a cotton batting, if you were to use one, and cotton fabrics, then everything's going to shrink hopefully at the same rate. And I like that look, that antique washed look, that bunched up like my grandmother's quilts looked like when they were finished. So what you want to do is, most of the time you for a rag quilt, you want to put things wrong sides together, which means that you would put the back side of the fabric together so that when you sew it together, the fronts, you've got your front and your back. So to begin with, you have to you sew an X across.
So you quilt to start with.
You do the quilting to start with. And I always use a walking foot because it helps feed the fabric through better. You can go pretty fast. You don't have to mark it. It doesn't. There's no great science to this because it's when you get it put together, it doesn't really matter. It's not have to be too accurate like most quilts do. Okay, so now you're finished with the first one. Basically, you will do this to every one of the quilt squares that you're going to put in this quilt. For this particular quilt, I used 200 separate squares and made 100 sandwiches.
Oh, wow.
And so you can use a decorative stitch here. You can use a regular straight stitch like I did. It gives you an opportunity to use all the different stitches that your sewing machine offers that we don't always get to use. Once you have all of your squares put together and you've quilted the centers, then you're ready to assemble the rows. So what you want to do is you try not to match up the back. Obviously these two are the same, so we would flip one and have the trains be on the top and the dots be on the top. And you're going to put them together like this, because one side is going to be a finished side and one side's going to be a raw side. So you use a 1/2-inch seam allowance, which I use the edge of my foot, which may not completely be a 1/2 inch, but it's consistent. So you just simply sew the two together. So now, as you see, you have a finished side and a raw side with a raw edge. And later on, once you're completely finished, actually I snip in between rows. And the reason why I do that, it just breaks up the monotony of it all. So what you're going to do once this whole row is finished, which would be, you're going to put 10 to a row, is snip at an angle, which gives it the ragged effect, which is why it's called a rag quilt.
My home ec teacher always said press, press, press. Do you press this?
I don't press these. Pressing is very important in quilting, but not with this because it's kind of a mishmash anyway. And there's a lot of seams, and you're going to snip through everything anyway. So it's really not a need. You can if you're one of those people who have to, but I don't. I choose not to, and I don't pin these either. But I have had students in the past who've marked every X on their pieces and ironed everything. And that's okay. You can do that if you want to, but it's not necessary.
Good to know. Okay, so how many of these sections that you'll have to go across to make I guess it depends on what size quilt you want.
Depends on what size quilt you want, and I always try to use numbers that are divisible by, that are easily divided. I try to stick with 5s and 10s and easy numbers to work with. Really, you can use any size square that you want. And I also try not to use squares that are going to waste fabric. If you stick with 10s and 5s, you're going to get more out of a strip of fabric than you are others. But for this particular quilt that we're making, that's like the one behind us, there are 10 squares in each row, and then there are 10 rows, so it's a 50 by 50 quilt, because these, even though these are cut at 6, they will finish at 5 because of your half inch seam allowance.
So when you get all the rows together, then
you're going to put them together, and basically what I do, you
want
to do it opposites. And if you'll notice in this rag quilt in particular, I don't pay any attention to that. I try my best, but I'm not going to make myself crazy over it. Because you could, right? You very easily could. So basically, what you're going to do the same thing as you did before with the rows, but you're going to pick up and make sure that you have a raw edge and a clean edge, meaning your rag quilt's seam stays all on one side and your finished seam stays all on the other. So I basically try to match up the seams, and because I don't iron and because it's too much stress on your sewing machine, I try to have one seam lay one side and the other seam lay the other. And then again, a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and just sew it together.
Okay, now we have this square. Now we would just do it many times over and over and over until you got to the finished.
Right, till you get to the size you want.
And if this was the very end of the quilt, if this was the far end of it, it would just have, you would just clip this, you'd make a stitch down.
You would stitch a 1/2 inch around, all the way around the outside of the quilt, and then you would snip it just as well.
And that's all you do to finish it.
That's all you do to finish it.
That's great. You have to. Real quilts, you have to do the binding and stuff.
No binding,
I'm not
no
good at
anything
that.
like that. Right.
That's so cool. Well, let's look at one of your finished products, because I know we could do this all day.
Right, yes. We could do this all day.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for showing us this, and it's been really great being here. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I've really enjoyed this show today. This has been the only kind of quilt I've known how to make my whole life. I can do yo-yos without messing up. But I've learned something new today, and I'm going to go try one. I have 3 nieces and nephews in Texas that they're going to get surprise Christmas presents this year. Thanks so much for watching, and tune in again.